Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Pro Talk, where I talk with people in my life who are really good at whatever they do, are a pro or an expert at whatever they do, whether it be their jobs, their careers, or ministries, their hobbies, their passions, whatever it may be. Just talk about anything in life. Today I have somebody who is phenomenal at what she does, whether she may think so or not. Somebody who has been in my life for a while. She is a teacher here in Charleston, South Carolina, in that area, and one, that's amazing, but then two, also she deals with kids with special needs and autism, and so we're going to talk about that. Please welcome my good friend Danielle Coleman. Thank you, Danielle.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So I want to talk to you about, like I said earlier, the world of autism, how you got involved in that, how you kind of got started with that and teaching in general. But I want to start, one, you are not originally from Charleston.
Nope.
Like most people in Charleston.
Yep.
So talk to me, you grew up in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Talk to me about growing up in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like? What do you remember? What were some good things?
Mm-hmm.
And then talk to me about coming down to South Carolina and kind of adapting to the low country lifestyle, I guess, if you want to say.
Okay, sure. So I grew up in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. It's most well known for the Amish that live there.
Yeah.
And I was a part of a really great church. It's called Manor Brethren in Christ. It's very conservative, kind of a small offshoot off of Mennonite. And that's actually what brought me into working with people with disabilities.
Okay.
The church that I grew up in had a large disability ministry. And when I was in high school, our youth group went to a camp called Johnny and Friends.
Okay.
Which Johnny Erickson Tada, if you're familiar with her, she is a paraplegic that started a disability ministry, I believe, in her 20s or 30s.
Okay.
And so she has camps all over the United States for people with disabilities. And the difference is that the whole family goes to the camp, not just the person with the disability.
Okay. Cool.
So our youth group ran the children's ministry for the week.
Okay.
And so that was my first introduction to working with people with disabilities.
Cool.
And then Lancaster, I loved Lancaster. I miss Lancaster. It is beautiful. It's full of rolling hills.
Yeah.
Lots of farms. My husband is from inner city Philadelphia, and one of my favorite things that I ever did to him was I brought him home for the first time. I had a convertible, and they had just spread manure over all of the fields.
Nice.
He had never smelled such a thing.
A city boy not knowing what the smell is. That's
he was
funny.
like, it's in my mouth.
I can picture Tide, right? Her husband is Tide Coleman. I can picture him like, oh, I don't like, get me back to Philly.
Yeah, it was hilarious. So like where I grew up, there are just cornfields everywhere.
Yeah.
The Amish are actually a lot more spread out now. So there were several different Amish living in walking distance.
Did you have friends or people you knew who were Amish?
No, I did. I was friends with Mennonites.
Okay.
But not the Amish is a little. I mean, they're very friendly.
Yeah.
But they are a very
secluded.
A close knit community. They will wave and say hi to you, but not as much becoming close with them.
Okay.
There's a Mennonite schoolhouse down the road from where I grew up. We have lots of snow. Trying to think of anything else with Lancaster. Like when I moved to South Carolina and somebody asked me if I wanted to go to a farmer's market, it is very different here. I bet. than it is there.
Yeah.
A farmer's market in Lancaster is a true farm. I mean, it's a bunch of farmers.
Yeah.
And they're selling, or, their whoopie pies are a very Lancaster thing.
Yep.
And so a whoopie pie, if you don't know, is like kind of like a cupcake, like denser cake, and then a frosting in the middle.
Okay.
And there's an Amish family that comes to our local flea market in Lancaster that sells, I think it's like 25, 30 different flavors of whoopie pies.
So it's kind of similar to maybe like a moon pie here in South Carolina.
Yeah,
okay.
It's similar to a moon pie.
Okay.
Let's see, what else was very different moving here? Obviously, the climate was very different. I remember the first time it snowed here, and I made fun of a lot of people because where I grew up, snow is pretty normal.
Yeah.
Whereas here, nobody knew what to do with it.
Right.
Nobody
knows.
could drive, which was terrifying.
Well, nobody can drive in general in South Carolina.
Correct. Very correct. And then the culture is different. Lancaster, there are very kind people, but people do tend to keep more to themselves.
Yeah.
So, and then I lived in Philly for 6 years,
Okay.
Which is a very different group of people. So like in Philly, if you get your car breaks down and you're on the side of the road, nobody's going to stop for you. They'll
Right.
flick you off as they keep moving.
Well, you know.
Well, you know.
Yeah.
But here, like I remember the first time my car broke down, because we have crappy cars, and like 12 people stopped to help me.
That's awesome.
I also like the grocery stores here, how they offer to take your groceries to the car.
Yeah.
You can easily spot a northerner, because a northerner will be immediately like, no, what?
Yeah.
No, you're going to steal from me? Absolutely. Whereas that's very much like the Southern hospitality culture.
Yeah, that's what we do.
That's what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas for us, that feels very odd.
Yeah.
And then just kind of like the pace of life. You know, people standing in the checkout, just shooting the breeze with the cashier with a line behind them. That would never happen.
No.
You'd lose your job.
Yeah.
Because the goal is to keep the line moving.
Yeah.
So those are just some of like the cultural differences.
Yeah. So what brought you to South Carolina? Was it school? Was it you just wanted to like try something new, or?
No, I actually lost my job.
Okay.
I was teaching in the Philadelphia School District.
Okay.
And it was around the recession, 2008, 2009.
Okay.
And they laid off all of their teachers that were in the district 3 years or less.
Wow.
Because in Pennsylvania, you reach tenure at 3 years.
Oh,
so you can't really be fired as well
Okay.
after that, especially where I was. The Philadelphia Teaching Union is very strong.
Yeah.
And so when I got laid off, there were thousands of other teachers looking for the same types of jobs.
Yeah.
And I found a website that allowed you to apply for jobs all over the country.
Okay.
And I got an interview for Charleston County in New York City. They actually were like at a hotel
Oh, wow.
hosting open interviews.
That's crazy.
And I found out, like, I want to say the last week of July, that I was being hired by a middle school here. And I moved to Charleston. I got here 3 a.m. the first day of school with kids.
Wow.
So it was a very, and I was told that I was going to be teaching special needs, which
Yeah.
is what I had taught in Philly.
Mm-hmm.
But when I showed up that day, they said, oh, actually,
Yeah.
you're going to be teaching 8th grade ELA. And I was like, it's very different.
Yeah, very different. Very different. Some similarities, but also just very different. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to say, like, I like to teach colors and numbers because that's what I'm good at.
Yeah.
Yeah. So teaching like grammar and that kind of thing was not.
Right. Where does the comma go? Wherever you wanted to go. I don't know.
GPT tells me.
Wherever the red pen tells me it needs to go. That's where it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was a rough start. I ended up teaching that for about 2 months, and then a position opened up in the behavior support class. And since I had taught that before, I flipped into that position.
Okay.
So that's how I ended up here. I thought I would stay. I was not married at the time. Ty and I were still just dating.
Yeah.
And I never expected to stay. I thought it would be a year, maybe 2 years.
Yeah.
And then I'd go back.
Okay. Really cool.
Stayed. Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. I have a question for you. And if you don't want to answer it, you can say no. That's not what we're talking about this. But you and Ty, well, first off, number one, let me just say this. You and Ty are like two of my favorite people in the world. Mm-hmm. And y'all are phenomenal parents. All of your kids are just phenomenal. But also you and anybody at River Bluff at my old church, anybody that knows you will agree with me when I say this. You are super mom. Just the way you handle everything, the way you push forward and do what you need to do, it's just, I've always admired that about you. And Ty is a phenomenal dad, and y'all are just two of my favorite people. I should have said that in the beginning. But my question is, for those people who don't know, Ty is black, African American, and you are white. Especially being down here in South Carolina, was that interracial marriage difficult? And maybe dating, was that difficult for y'all? Or was it just natural? If you want to talk about that, you can.
Sure. So dating, we had some pushback from both sides of our family, actually. And it's interesting, like the North is actually a little bit more segregated that we've seen than the South. When we first moved here, Ty was hilarious. Ty looked up different places and kept seeing plantation on everything, and he was like, I'm not living at a plantation.
That's appropriate.
Valid,
it makes sense. Yeah.
Valid. But what we found is everything used to be a plantation here. We expected and were prepared for a lot of issues here
Sure.
due to us being interracial, but we actually have not experienced that.
That's awesome.
Here.
Okay.
We do experience it sometimes when we go home.
Yeah.
Depending on, like, where I grew up is a very, now it's very different now.
Yeah.
But when I lived there, the Black community was more in the city.
Sure.
And I lived more in the suburb or rural area.
Country, yeah.
More country area.
Okay.
And so just, I had never seen an interracial couple
Yeah.
while I was growing up.
Yeah.
Then when I went to college in Philly, started to see it a little bit more and a little bit more. But
Yeah.
we actually see it more here
Mm-hmm.
than we do when we go home.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Well, and the reason why I ask that, it doesn't have to do with autism and special needs,
Mhm.
but y'all have a really strong marriage, and y'all are people who people in River Bluff look up to y'all, whether it be youth kids, young adults, whatever. Everybody knows y'all and everybody loves y'all, and so it can be a little bit daunting, I would think, to be in that relationship. So the way that y'all have handled that, y'all are really good at that.
Well, we
So.
use a lot of comedy. We learn to
Yeah.
laugh really hard.
I use comedy in life in general. Like,
yeah,
you just gotta laugh.
It's a good coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And we laughed. I mean, our families could not be more different.
Right.
And so we learned to just find humor
Yeah.
in that. And yeah, I mean, now my in-laws can now laugh with me
Yeah.
on things. But I'm sure I looked terrified just sitting in the corner.
Yeah.
Not because like I was scared of them, but just it was such a
Different world.
experience.
Yeah.
Than I had ever, like, we talk about our first Thanksgiving together. We called my family and they're like gathering around the piano to sing Great Is Thy Faithfulness.
Yeah.
Nana plays. We all have our voice parts.
Yep.
And then we go to my husband's family and everybody's playing Drunk Pictionary. And it was just, just very.
Both can be fun.
Both can be fun. Just very different worlds.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah. So, but we've laughed a lot, and our kids, I feel like, have gotten to experience a good, they see two different worlds and
Yeah.
how everybody can be treated the same.
Yeah.
I think
That's
it's very
awesome.
important to expose our kids to that kind of stuff
Yeah.
early.
Well, and now that, and you said everybody can be treated the same no matter where you come from.
Mhm.
That has to do a lot with autism.
Yes.
And so because I didn't know that you and your family ran camps, summer camps,
Mhm.
in that kind of world. That was really
Mhm.
cool. When you were younger, did you always want to be a teacher, or how did that come along?
Yeah, so funny. My plan was to be a nurse.
Okay.
The university I went to, it's called Eastern University. It's
Yep.
a small school in Pennsylvania, outside of Philly. And they told me that they were going to have a nursing program starting my sophomore year.
Okay.
I loved the school when I went to visit it.
Yeah.
Just, you kind of get a feeling
Yeah.
depending on where you're going. And so I said, okay, great. I'll take all my prerequisites, my freshman year, Bible, theology,
Yeah.
all of those things. Sophomore year, I'll take my nursing classes.
Yep.
They never started a nursing program.
Wow.
And so then by that point, we had to do service projects.
Okay.
And one of them was working at a school. One of the things different up north than here in Charleston, up north they tend to have entire schools devoted to special needs.
Sure.
And so my service project was serving in that school.
Okay.
And I loved it.
Yeah.
And so more because I wanted to stay at the school
Yeah.
than actually wanting to be a teacher. But
Yeah.
I thought, like, okay, I wanted to be a nurse because I wanted to help people,
Yes.
and bodily fluids and that kind of thing don't make me uncomfortable.
Right.
And so I just pivoted to special needs.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and so, you've been around special needs for a long time
Mhm.
now that I've learned that. I guess my next question is, why do you think special needs is so? Well, first off, tell me about your job down here in South Carolina. So you've been a teacher, but now, as we were talking before, I for some reason was under the assumption that you were over all of the special needs for all of Charleston County Schools.
No.
I don't know where I got that idea, but you do deal with Charleston County Schools,
Mhm.
but just in a different way. Talk to me about like how that came about, how you got from a teaching role to more of a assistant and kind of a go-to person role, about that.
Sure. So I started off by teaching emotional support. And those, for you don't know, those are kids that have normally emotional trauma
Yeah.
and some other emotional diagnoses. So it's a lot of big behaviors.
Yeah.
And so I did a year of that, and then I did something that we here call low incidence.
Yep.
Up north, it's called life skills.
Yep.
I much prefer life skills
Yep.
as a name. I did that in Philly, and then that's where I found my heart. I loved it.
Yeah.
And life skills, you kind of are low incidence. You capture lots of different kids.
Mm-hmm.
So those kids tend to be impacted more by their cognitive abilities, but you might have some with Downs. You might have some with cerebral palsy. You might have autism.
Yeah.
You might have, I had a student once with a TBI. So you get like multiple, disabilities within one class and personalities and levels. You might have a kid come in that's on a 18-month cognitive level and a kid that's on a third grade cognitive level. And it's your job to figure out how to reach all of them.
Yeah.
So I did that the longest. I got a job here at a place called R.B. Stall High School.
Yep.
Good old Stall. I taught that low incidence class for about 8 years.
Okay.
And found that I'm very good at behavior.
Yes.
And so I tended to get the majority of the students that had large behaviors.
Yeah.
And the only reason that I'm good at behavior is my motto in education is every child can be taught. It's my job to figure out how.
Yes, absolutely.
And I love figuring out a good behavior puzzle.
Yeah.
Because behavior is a form of communicating.
Yeah.
You're communicating to me something's wrong, right?
Right.
There's some barrier between you and your ability to be here in school.
Yes.
And I love figuring out those puzzles.
Yes.
I love waiting kids out.
Yeah.
I love, we call it a behavior burst if
Mm-hmm.
you're in like ABA or SPED.
Yeah.
So that just means like I'm going to try different things.
Yeah.
And I always try to warn my teachers those behaviors will get worse
Yeah.
before they get better.
Absolutely.
Because things that were working for them,
Yeah.
such as like I want to get out of doing my work,
Right.
so I use my behavior. So
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're like, go ahead, do your best. This
Yeah.
worksheet's not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Those behaviors get bigger.
Yeah.
And so we call it a burst because
Yep.
eventually it reaches a point, it bursts,
Yeah.
and then you see the behavior drop off.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very good at that, and I was also getting a little burnout being in the classroom.
Sure.
Because in education, we reward our teachers, our
Mm-hmm.
good teachers, by making their jobs harder.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if
that
you're
tends to be the case.
yeah. So if you're really good at behavior, whereas you used to have 1 or 2 hard kids, you might now have 6.
Yeah.
And I had a large class. I was now a mom. I had 2 kids at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I just got to a point where I felt like I needed to change.
Yeah.
And so our district has something called autism itinerants. We are still a teacher. We're still under teacher contracts,
Mm-hmm.
but we get a caseload of schools. So right now I have 5, and my job is to be the point of contact for all the kids with autism in those schools.
Okay.
I also have services on students' IEPs.
Yep.
So I have supplemental services, which just means that I come in and I collaborate with the teachers.
Yeah.
When things come up, I can make materials, or we can sit down and do a problem-solving session.
Yeah.
And then there are certain kids that I have direct services with. So
Okay.
I might pull them out if I'm trying to teach them some strategies or some social skills,
Yeah.
or sometimes I push into their classroom
Okay.
if we feel like that's the best for them, that they need assistance in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of my job now. So I have 1 high school, 1 middle school, and 3 elementary schools.
Okay. So do you, does it matter to you whether you prefer elementary, middle, or high school, or do you just take everybody?
I love high school.
Yeah.
Little ones bite more.
Yeah.
Is what
Yes, they do.
I have found.
And you can't bite them back.
You can't. That's frowned upon. So I've learned to love elementary school in the last couple of years. I've been
Yeah.
in this job about 5 years.
Okay.
And we obviously have a lot more elementary schools than we do
Yeah.
high schools.
For sure.
And so I just learned, I still get at least 1 high school. They always give me at least 1
Yeah.
every year, so I still get that, but I've really learned to love elementary. And one of the big things I'm trying to teach my elementary school teachers
Mm-hmm.
is if you can work on these behaviors when they're this big,
Yeah.
right, when they're tiny and little,
It makes other
it's-
people's
oh
jobs
my
a lot
gosh,
easier.
like,
Yeah.
when you get these kids in high school, they're huge.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
so there are some behaviors that I was like, why couldn't we have worked on that when they were 5?
Yeah.
You know, would have been less destructive by the time they were 16, 17, 18.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so talk to me about, so you're in this role, you've done it for about 5 years, with whatever you can talk about, because obviously there's things that you can't talk about.
Mm-hmm.
What does a typical day look like for you of like, okay, you go, obviously since you have 5 schools, you have to travel.
Yep.
Is your like kind of home base one school and you travel to different ones throughout the day? How does that kind of work?
Sure. So I actually bribe schools to give me a space.
Okay.
And I told them, if you give me a space, I'll be here more often.
Yeah.
If I have to work in the hall, I've done IEP meetings on my computer in the hallway or
Yeah.
outside,
Yeah.
you know. So if you give me a space, I'll be there. We do have to pick one school as our home school.
Yeah.
So I pick the one school that I have a mailbox at.
Yep.
And that is like the days that I know I have meetings with my team
Mm-hmm.
or long trainings. That's where I tend to live.
Okay.
Now, a typical day for me really depends. So, like, I have days that are heavy with direct services.
Mm-hmm.
So that means, like, I'm going and I'm pulling kids and I'm filling out data sheets.
Yep.
And then I have other days with normally my specialized programs.
Okay.
So those are our more, like, self-contained
Mm-hmm.
classes. Those days, I normally hop around from class to class.
Okay.
What do you need? How's it going?
Yeah.
There are some classes that are doing great. So I like to just hang out in there.
Yeah.
Get to watch, see some good things,
Yeah.
and then take pictures and videos and share them with other teachers, that
Yeah.
especially our newer teachers,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not like we have a lot of time in education to
No.
get them out and looking.
Yeah.
And a good teacher knows how to steal anything
Yes.
that you see that you like.
Yes.
And so that's kind of my typical day. So I try to set up, one day as more service delivery and another day is more of like collaboration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with collaboration, collaborating is a big part of education. You
Yes.
can't do it on your own.
No.
Is it harder to collaborate with people who are working with autism, or is it do you find it easier to work with people because they want to collaborate more?
really
or
depends.
okay.
Yeah, it really depends. A lot of times people don't like me when I go in because I'm the person, like, if they're burnout, because again, they have to deal with the behaviors on
Right.
a daily basis.
Yep.
Whereas I just get to float in and out once a week.
Right.
But when I come in and I have to be like, hey, you got to try these things.
Yeah.
Whereas they're at the point of, I just want this kid moved.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm tired. He's hard, or
Mhm.
she's hard. I want this kid moved. And so sometimes I'm not the favorite person
Sure.
that walks in. So it really depends on the adult, and it depends on their heart,
Yeah.
and if they're seasoned or not seasoned.
Right.
Some people don't know what they're getting into.
Mhm.
Their interview process did not prepare them
Right.
for the classroom that they're about to walk into.
Yeah.
And so those, I try to just simplify is my number one method I use when teachers are overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I try to simplify things, have them, you need to work on just one thing. So
Yeah.
at the beginning of the year, it's just work on a schedule and a routine.
Yeah.
That's it. Because once you get your schedule and your routine, you can build from there.
Yeah.
But some teachers come in and they feel like they have to do it all.
Sure.
Or they see the teacher that's been there for 15 years and her room, looks amazing and runs.
Yeah.
But that took her 15 years to
Yeah.
build.
Yeah. You got to start somewhere.
You have to start somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess you said that you've been raised in church and that whole lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
How has your faith helped you in, one, the classroom, but two, dealing with autism? Because I always tell people, I'm like, being a teacher, one, is hard as it is, but being a teacher that's teaching special needs, autism, all that kind of stuff, that's on a whole nother level. And surely you have to have, like, having faith helps you with everything. How has your faith in your relationship with Christ helped you navigate this world?
I use a lot of prayer.
Yeah.
Prayer is my number one. Even when I was in the classroom, I was blessed enough to have another believer with me as an assistant.
Okay.
And we would pray over the desks.
Yeah.
And that's when I taught emotional support, and we really needed lots of prayer.
Yeah.
That year. So I use a lot of prayer. I also heard a phrase several years ago during a Bible study about how everybody is an image bearer of Christ.
Mm.
And I think of that very often when
Yeah.
I'm getting frustrated, not with the kids. I typically get more frustrated with the adults.
Yeah.
That I feel like, you don't even like kids anymore. Why are you still here?
Yeah.
And I try to keep at the forefront of my head, you are an image bearer of Christ.
Yeah.
And treat them as such.
Right.
And then patience.
Yeah.
Being able to have the patience, knowing that, they can move from where they are, talking about some of the kids and the behaviors that we have,
Mhm.
and move forward, right?
Right.
That there is something on the other side. So that's really how my faith, And I've seen, especially when I taught at Stall,
Yeah.
that felt like a mission field.
Yeah.
Felt more like a calling.
Yes. I love that.
I am here to love on these kids and help them as much as I possibly can.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people may not know this, but South Carolina's education is low, very low. And so is it, and I love that you said that you have a calling to be there, because I think everybody, if you have a relationship with Christ, everybody has a calling to be Jesus to people. There's different ways of doing that, of being a teacher or being a doctor or a lawyer or preacher, whatever the case may be. How has your calling grown or expanded? Do you feel like your calling has changed at all? Do you feel like your calling is still, I'm doing what I'm doing, or talk about that?
Yeah, so I feel like it has changed over the years. I think becoming a mom definitely changed some of it, because I always felt, which other working moms out there I think can feel the same way, that either I was succeeding in fulfilling my calling at work or I was at home.
Right.
And so it felt difficult to master both at the same time.
Right.
And so my calling has shifted over the years with education. More now, I'm just trying to empower the amazing teachers that I get to work with.
Yeah.
And so I've tried to shift into more being a cheerleader.
Okay.
You know, like being there to give advice. Now, unfortunately, sometimes I do have to be like the bearer of bad news.
Sure.
Depending on the situation. But I try to focus on equipping them, because I know that, especially my last few years at Stall, that were very difficult.
Yeah.
I had amazing autism itinerant who is the one that helped me get into this position. And she was the biggest cheerleader that I had.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's more of how I've shifted to be more of an encourager.
Yeah.
Instead of focusing so much on the calling of the kids.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and something that you and a lot of people I know have in common is I have a good friend of mine who says that I don't want to be a good teacher. I want to be a great teacher. I don't want to be a good this. I want to be a great this. Who, and you have that, I think, I feel like you and you have that in you as well. Who gave you that drive to do everything in excellence?
My dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. My dad was also an educator, and he also worked in a low-income school, which I love Title I. That is my jam.
Yeah.
If I go to fancier schools, I feel out of place.
Sure.
Title I is where my heart 100% is. And
Yeah.
my dad is the one that fostered that within me.
Yeah.
You know, and he worked late, worked hard, and made a massive difference in
Yeah.
the community. Now,
Absolutely.
he worked at the same school. He was in the same district for 31 years
Okay.
before he retired. And he passed away last year.
Yeah.
But his funeral, we couldn't even fit everybody into the church.
Wow.
There was a line around the block. We had his funeral in the community that he taught
That's so special.
And the amount of stories that, sorry, I'll get emotional, but the
No,
amount
you're
of
good.
stories that we have heard, my brothers, myself, and my mom, of the impact that he made
Yeah.
on not just the students, but the teachers and the community
Yeah.
there. And that's what instilled my drive. I want to make a difference.
Yeah.
You know, I want a lot of these kids in these Title I schools, you know, their life at home isn't great.
Yeah.
You know, and their parents are doing the best they can.
Absolutely.
But one of the biggest differences I've found is the parents don't know how to advocate for their kids.
Yeah.
You know, they don't know the words to say.
Yeah.
They don't know who to call.
We were talking earlier about a family that I know who they loved their kids, but they didn't know how to handle them, and so they just kind of did shortcuts with them. And while I understand that, like you got to do what you got to do sometimes.
Yep.
But it's always the best case scenario to do what's best for the child, even if it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah, and schools and families should be partners.
Yes.
You know, like when I'm in meetings and stuff with parents, whatever I'm suggesting for us to do in the classroom, I always make copies so that they can do it at home.
Yeah.
Because if we're not consistent, if we're not all working on the same goals or the same skills, we're not going to succeed.
Right.
You know, and so when I was in the classroom, a huge part of what I wanted is I wanted to be partners with the parents.
Yeah.
You know, plus their job is so much harder.
Yeah.
You know, I only had to be with that kid, 6-7 hours a day.
Yeah.
That was their life.
Right.
And having empathy
Yeah.
for that, it's hard. You know, some of these kids and the behaviors they have or the physical needs that they may have, that's an exhausting life.
Yes.
And, you know, I think a problem we might have is teachers get very defensive
Yeah.
when they're being questioned on things.
Yeah.
And my take is always, I want to assume the best of people.
Right.
So if you're coming at me as a mom,
Mhm.
that tells me that you don't feel that your kid is completely safe or being served correctly in
Yeah.
the school. And as a mom, you should be a lion,
Yes.
right? That's
Yes.
our job as moms, is to protect our kids.
Mama bear. Yeah.
Right. So instead of getting super defensive, trying to figure out what it is.
Yeah.
You know, in some cases, like as a mom myself, there have been several teachers I felt like you didn't like my kid.
Yeah.
So I was much more defensive
Yes.
with them
Yeah.
because I had this feeling of you
Yeah.
just don't like them.
Yeah.
You know, and I try to tell teachers at the end of the day, we just want to know our kids are loved.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're going to make progress. We want them, but we just want to know that you're excited when our kid walks through the door.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah. So I guess to wrap up, and you kind of mentioned it earlier, what are some, maybe one or two like misconceptions about teaching in the world of autism that you kind of want to kind of set straight? And maybe that's number one, but number two, what are some things that can be worked on in those fields in your thoughts?
Okay. So I think one of the big things that I hear all the time is that, you know, teaching is an easy job because you just show up in the morning, you get your summers off, you get your holidays off.
Yeah.
Teachers only get paid for the times that they work. Like
Right.
when I receive my paycheck, it's for 60 hours, not 80.
Right.
Because that money is spread out.
Right.
So that's one of the biggest misconceptions I
Yep.
always correct people on.
Yeah.
And special ed is a tough field.
Yeah.
A lot of our special ed teachers do not get lunches.
Yeah.
They do not get planning. Our state recently did an unencumbered time so that every teacher is supposed to get 30 minutes.
Okay.
Some schools make them do that before school starts
Okay.
or after school ends. That was not
Interesting.
the intent.
Yeah.
Some of our teachers don't get a chance to pee ever.
Yeah.
You know,
You have a good bladder.
Right. Yeah, you do. And a lot of UTIs that come out of education. So, you know, so if the teacher isn't, if they make a mistake,
Mm-hmm.
their jobs are super hard.
Yeah.
You know, they are managing classrooms now. The majority of my self-contained classrooms are 12, 13,
Wow.
which I know people on the outside think like, oh, that's a small class.
Okay. 12, 13 kids in one
In
room.
one
Okay.
room.
Okay.
But we're talking about those kids that have lower cognitive skills,
Yeah.
higher physical needs, higher behaviors.
Yes.
So I always tell, like, count each kid as 3.
Yeah.
Right? So now you're looking at a class of like 36.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so just having grace and patience
Yes.
with those people. And then as far as the system, our system's broken.
Yeah.
Our system is very broken. I don't have all the answers. I don't know 100% what we could do. I have some small ideas.
Sure.
But it is broken, and we keep trying to throw different curriculums at it,
Mhm.
or you know, different task forces.
Yeah.
And our numbers are high
Mm-hmm.
in these classrooms, and our teachers are leaving by the droves
Yeah.
because the job is harder.
Yeah.
It is much harder now than it was when I started.
Yeah.
The needs of the kids are much higher now than it
Mhm.
was when I started, and you're dealing with a lot more defensiveness from families
Yeah.
and communities than I felt like I dealt with in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the last question I can ask you before we end, what are, when you think, what are some things that keep you going as a teacher, as an educator? You know, like you come in, you have a great day. What are some things that remind you, like, okay, I am making a difference. I am doing this the right way. You know, I am called to do this. What are those things?
So in my specific role, it's when I get emails from teachers that are like, hey, it's working.
Nice.
You know, so like I will pull a kid and we'll work on a strategy, and I'll give the teacher all the stuff, and I
Yep.
always tell them 2 weeks. Be consistent with it for 2 weeks.
Yep.
And then let me know how
Yeah.
it's going, because you
Yeah.
know, it takes time.
In a day or two, you're not gonna notice.
Right. Actually, it might get worse.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you know,
It's
I
always
try
gonna
to
get
be
worse till it gets
honest,
better.
You know, it always gets worse before it gets better. And so those are the ones that keep me going.
Yeah.
Is when things are working. Walking into schools, we have some amazing teachers.
Yeah.
Love their kids. They're fun. They're willing to be flexible and do all the things. So that's what keeps me going. Is
Yeah.
some of the amazing teachers I get to work with, and then seeing those light bulbs go off.
Yeah.
At least because I mostly work on behavior, but
Yeah.
seeing like those light bulbs going off when it comes to behavior
Yeah.
and those kids growing.
Well, and I would think, and correct me if I'm wrong, something, if I was a teacher and like you, I would think some of those teachers that give you a harder time, it's like, okay, well, that just gives me more of a reason to try harder and do, I like a challenge.
Yes, I do like a challenge. Just like when I was teaching, I always loved the more difficult kids, and so it's the same thing.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here with me today and kind of helping me dive into this world. I know a decent amount of this world, but I've learned a whole lot today. So thank you so much.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.